Hello and welcome to one of my videos. As you might have already noticed, this one is again in English, and for me this is kind of an experiment once again, or at least it's part of the overall experiment that I already started in the past. And yeah, so I want to try, or I want to find out what language is best. As you might have seen, I have already made one or two other English videos. They went quite well, I would say. And I also produce videos in German as I do and as I did in the past as well. And now for me the big question is what language should I pick for the next videos I will produce. I'm obviously very fine with English. I mean, this is a language I'm speaking at least in huge parts of my daily business and work. But I'm also very fine with German. The most interesting question for me is what language would, let's say, attract the more video views or people watching my videos. So that's why I'm asking you for your comments. What do you think? Should I stick with English? Should I go back to German? Should I try to do both? That's something I'm going to do with this video. This video will go online in English and in German as well. So please use the comment section and just give me some ideas, some comments. What do you think about the language thing, and then what should I do with this? Thank you very much. Now, but back to the topic that I want to talk about, and this is Azure Networking Basics, as I said. Before I will dive into the Azure portal and show a few more things there, I want to first give you a short overview on a theoretical side. So what I am going to talk about today is mostly regarding VMs, but also regarding other services that you might run in Azure. All of this would need to have something that is called a virtual network. So this is the first, let's say, border or type of encapsulation that you might have. Important to note is that this virtual network is, first of all, free, so you do not have to pay for the VNet itself, and it is, let's say, bordered or encapsulated within a region and a subscription as well. That means that you cannot use a virtual network beyond its region or beyond its subscription. When you create a virtual network, what you need to have, or what you need to give the virtual network, is something that is called an address space. The address space is not an Azure resource itself. Just for understanding purposes, I've put it in a second colored rectangle here. So in the stage of creating the VNet, you will give the address space more or less as a property of the VNet that you can change later if needed. This address space is a list of, let's say, networks or address spaces that you are going to, let's say, reserve for further use for the VNet and the next items that are coming up. These networks do not have to be in compliance with RFC 1980. So you can use the public IP ranges if you would like to. I would not recommend to do so. I would recommend using private IP addresses as I've done it here, but you are free to use the public IP addresses as well if that is needed, or if you wish to do so. This address space, as I said, is a list, so it could be one network, it could be multiple networks. The only thing is that these networks should be discrete. The next thing you need to create inside the VNet, so it is not created in the address space. It's important to know you will create that inside the VNet, is at least one subnet. These subnets need to have a defined subnet address range network, what do you want to call it? So I've noted that in a CIDR notation here, and these subnet networks need to be part of the address space. It could be either a whole network from the address space, or it could be a part of it. So in my two examples here, I've created two subnets. and both of them are just a portion of the networks I gave in the address space. One subnet would be fine, multiples is okay as well. There is certain resources or certain scenarios where you would have to create a subnet just for one certain resource. One of the examples would be the VPN gateway. Another one would be the Azure firewall. They would have they want to have an empty, distinct subnet just for their solely use. Now that I've created these subnets, I could attach virtual machines to it. So if I create a virtual machine, or if I already have a created virtual machine and I want to connect it to network, I need to select the subnet I want to connect it to. And in general, it is not the VM itself that is connected to the subnet. It is the NIC, the network interface card of that VM that is connected to the subnet, and through the subnet it is connected to the VNet. Important to know, a virtual machine can only be connected to one VNet, so you cannot connect multiple VNets through a, let's say, central VM. Although a VM can have multiple NICs, and these NICs can be connected to different subnets, but they need to be connected to the same VNet. That is important. And yeah, obviously now that I've created VMs in the subnet, these VMs can use the network to communicate with each other. Every network card in the VM list will have a IP configuration, and on that IP configuration there is usually one private IP address, and there could be an additional public IP address if you wish to. These private IP addresses are assigned through Azure through DHCP, and you should never change the network configuration inside the guest OS. So please do not change the IP addressing either on Windows or on Linux through the operating system's way. If you need to change something on the network, for example, you want to make an IP address static, then please do this through the Azure portal or any other Azure based way. Could be ARM, could be PowerShell, Azure CLI, anything like this. I will show you that once we skip over to the demo. I will show you that on the portal. Also important to know is that beside the fact that the VMs within their subnet can communicate with each other, every VM in the VNet can communicate with every other VM in the VNet, regardless of the subnets. So in my example here, these two subnets are totally different. There's no overlapping port or anything, but the principle in Azure is that a VNet has an automatic routing for everything inside the VNet. There's another automatic routing, and that is that everything inside the VNet can reach the internet by default. These two things, one is VMs can communicate with each other within the VNet, regardless of the subnet. And the second thing is VMs can communicate with the internet. These two things can be changed through different ways. You could use network security groups. I will talk about that in my next video. You could use user-defined routing, for example, to route the traffic not directly to the internet, but through a central firewall. And you could also change that by placing something that is routing for yourself in the middle, like a firewall or a network virtual appliance, something like this. So there is different ways of changing the default behavior, but if you don't change it, all VMs inside the VNet can communicate with each other. Okay, that is the theory part. Now let's jump over into the portal and have a demo. So here we are in the Azure portal, and now I'm just going to create a new resource group to show you a short demo for that. The resource group would be called, let's say, RG Networking Demo. I'll put that into West Europe and then let it create. Then I jump right into the RG. And now, just for, let's say, referencing purpose, I'm going to create a VM. And in this case, I will pick a Windows Server. As for every VM, it needs to have a name. I just called it VM1. Let's put it into West Europe as well. I don't talk about the other options here too much. I'll just put a username and a password here. This is required. Now I can say I want to allow selected ports, and I will keep it to the default for now, and this is RDP 3389. If this would have been a Linux VM, this would be SSH22. Now I will skip the disk part and just jump to networking, and here we can see what Azure is going to create by default in this case. So in this case, as there is no already existing VNet in this RG, it is, let's say, recommending to create a new RG networking demo VNet. I could also select any of the other already existing VNets as long as they are in the same subscription and in the same region. So let's keep it to this way. The second thing is it is automatically creating a subnet. We cannot see the address space now. I will show you that in a moment. But it's creating a new subnet. It's calling it default. There is no other subnets I could pick because it's just an empty VNet for now. And the address that is using here, this subnet, is a subnet that is not used in any other VNet in my subscription. So this is, for now, this is a unique network. I could also change that if I want to do so, but this can only be done once the VNet is created. So in the step of creating the VNet, I cannot change the name or the address of the subnet it's creating here. As I selected that I want to allow the inbound port for RDP, it's creating a public IP as well. I could do go for none here, but I would let it stay on the default value for now. And I can select what type of network security group I want to have here. I will talk about network security groups in the next video, so I will skip that for now as well. And once again, we have the public inbound ports. I will skip all the other things. Down here, there's some few options I will talk about later. For example, you could put the VM behind a load balancer. I will talk about that in another video. For now, I will just keep that. And I will also skip all the other things. The only thing I want to deselect here is, I don't want to have, where's this, the boot diagnostics? Where did they put boot diagnostics? That's interesting. Oh, it's here. Let's say disable. So now let it create the VM. As this could take a few minutes, I will just accelerate the video and let it spin a little bit faster here. In the meanwhile, while you're waiting, you could hit the like button, or you could also, if you have not done it before, subscribe to my channel, please. Even that the VM is not created yet, that's not an issue for now. I will jump into the resource group and would jump into the VNet that was created here to show you what Azure created for me. What you can see here first is that this is a network in West Europe. We can see that it has an address space, and we can see that we have the Azure provided DNS service. We could change all this. Down here we have the address space where I could either change one of the already existing address spaces. The only issue is I need to allow it to have every already existing subnet still being part of the address spaces. So what I could do is I could change this, let's say for a 22, or could change it even for a 16. I could not change that for a 15. Once I would do that, I get the red bar here because number one, it's not a valid block. That's yeah, it's not a valid block, and so this is not allowing me to do that. What I also get as an information here is that, let's say I use this, then it is telling me that this is overlapping with an already existing VNet. So that's why, let's say, discard that here for now. And we could also add a second VNet. Let's say I'm using, I don't know, 123.0.24. So this is obviously this is a private, a public IP address, but still, as I said, this is fine. So now let's save. Then we can see what is already connected here. As I said, it's not the VM that is connected. It's the NIC of the VM that is connected, and the NIC is named after the VM. The VM's name was VM1 and the NIC is VM1, and then 577 is just a random number added to the VM's name. We can see that this is the IP address of the NIC. I will talk about that in a moment. Then we can see that we already created one subnet. I could just delete that subnet or create a new one. The next subnet could have any name. Let's say I'll just call it subnet 2. And either I could use one of the other networks I was giving in the address space, or I could just adjust it. Let's say I don't need a 24, I just want to have a 30 or something. That's also fine. Again, some more options I will talk about later. Oh yeah, it's just a too small network. 30 is a problem, and this is because Azure is reserving 4 IP addresses in the network for its own purpose. As you can see, we only have 250 IP addresses here available. And if I would create a network with a 30, this is a network that is just consisting of 4 addresses, and this is too few. It makes no sense to create such a network. Now, if we look in DNS servers, we can see that it is set to default Azure provided. That means this network is providing IP addresses for DNS servers through DHCP, and these DNS servers are provided by Azure. What you could also do as well is say I want to provide my own DNS servers. Let's say you are running a VM with a DNS server on it, for example, a domain controller. You could put its address here to distribute these DNS server addresses through DHCP. I will keep that to the default for now. Now if I go back to the RG, the resource group, we can see the NIC as well. This is this green icon here. And inside the NIC, we can see it has one IP configuration from scratch. It is assigned to the VNet RG networking demo VNet. It is assigned to a subnet. As you can see, you could not change the VNet. What you could do is you could delete the NIC and then create another NIC and assign it to another VNet. You need to shut down the VM for that, obviously. The only thing you could change is you could assign the VM to the second subnet. What you also could do is you could jump into the IP configuration where you could see that this VM has a public IP address associated, which is VM1-IP, that's the resource name, and that is the address. Could also disassociate it, so the VM would not have a public IP address anymore. Keep in mind that even if you disassociate it, the resource would remain, and you are going to pay for a public IP address. So in this case, even when I disassociate it, I would improve my security posture, but I would still pay for the public IP. And then down here, I can see that the current IP address is assigned dynamically, which is the first free address in the network. So this is number 4 at the end in this case. I could also set that to either make it static as it is, or I could set it to static and give it another address. In this case, I need to restart the VM because the DHCP process will not change the IP address that fast. I mean, I could also wait and wait and wait and wait till the next DHCP renewal, and then it would change, but this would take days. So that's why it says you need to restart the VM. So now let's save it. And this basically is it. So this is what you could do with a VNet, with a subnet, with a network interface card, the VM attached to it, and all the networking configuration. So I would keep it for that. If there's any questions, please post them down in the comments. If you have any other hints, notes, whatever, just give me a comment. And yeah, please give me a like if you liked that video. And if you have not done that before, then please put an abonnement on my channel here, so to subscribe to it. And hopefully I will see, or you will hear me, however, in the next video. Thanks for watching. See you.